Hey guys, how are y'all doing? My name is Laura and I'm going to go through this Leaving Cert history essay with you today from the 2016 paper. It's from the Politics and Society in Northern Ireland topic and it's the question about Devlin and Heaney. Now I'm going to dip in and dip out, guys, of different parts of the essay. I'm not going to go through every single bit of it, but you will be able to find the full essay annotated on Studyclix if you'd like a bit more detail on the paragraphs that I don't specifically speak about today. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, the question is something that you need to be clear on before you actually start writing your essay. You have a lot of choice on the Leaving Cert history paper, so, make sure you're happy with your choice. What to look out for. Even within this specific question, you have a choice to make one or more of the following. Devlin, John Hume or Seamus Heaney. Now this person chose to write about Devlin and Heaney and I think it's a smart choice. John Hume could easily be, any of them could easily be an essay on themselves, but John Hume specifically I think could be an essay on himself in terms of leaving certificate history. So Devlin and Heaney, as I said, I think good choice. The mistake that people are going to make is they're going to list that everything that Devlin did and everything that Heaney did and not talk about the impact that they had. What did their actions lead to? What did their actions increase? What did their successes mean? What was the effect of what they did? So if you're referring back to that word all the time or using any of those phrases, then you are answering the question on the day and the examiner is looking out for that. Now for this essay in particular, I want to make the point that make sure you stay focused on Northern Ireland, particularly if you're talking here about Seamus Heaney, because you could make the mistake because you might know a bit about Seamus Heaney from your English course and you could just end up talking about his work and the impact that his work had in general or his successes without actually bringing it back to the effect of his work on Northern Ireland. Remember, it is a history essay, so the slant on it needs to be different. Be aware of that. Now, I mentioned it briefly already, but before I get into the actual essay, let's have a look at the marking scheme that the examiners are given every year as they start to correct your papers. And a couple of things for you guys to think about. What's pointed out really clearly to the examiners is to look at the treatment of the set question. So ask yourself, are you answering the question that's asked on the day? Are you answering it accurately? And are you answering it specifically? Or are you just throwing down the information that you have on that topic? Or are you kind of answering the question that you wish had been asked? So be careful. Make sure you are zooming back to the question that was set for you on that particular day. On top of that, the examiners are told to check for detailed learning. Is it accurate? Is it substantial? Are you giving as much information as possible to help back up the historical argument or debate that you are engaging in? Have you given enough facts, statistics, quotes, etc., etc.? Remember, a huge amount of your marks goes for what I call the thinking on the day stuff. You've learned as best you can all of the facts and figures and information and bullet points that you possibly could up to this point, but on the day there's a bit of thinking. So are you going back to the set question and are you plucking out the relevant information for this particular task? Keep that in mind as you're looking at your own essays and other sample answers. So does this essay do all of those things? The introduction comes pretty close. I would love if this introduction, just even in one or two sentences, summed up Northern Ireland since World War II, since the introduction of the welfare state. It's kind of dealt with within the essay, but I think it's important to set the scene for the person reading this essay about Northern Ireland and why there was something to have an impact on. The tensions and the divide between the unionists and the nationalists in society. It's just important to make sure that you are clear on that before you get into the more specifics. This sentence, it does open summarising the question and it's done very well. Another thing that's particularly excellent in this essay is the phrasing. Sometimes points can get a bit lost with the overuse of commas. This introduction does not do that. It's really well put together. Even that last sentence there, this essay aims to explore how Bernadette, Devlin and Seamus Heaney impacted Northern Ireland. It's clear on the path this essay is going down. So off we go. Firstly, to look at paragraphs 1 and 2, which deal with Devlin. What would I like to say to you about these? So a nice amount of detail on her background and her upbringing. Again, a common mistake is to learn off too much about her childhood, because her childhood, of course, informs her actions, but it's not where her impact on Northern Ireland comes from. So don't make that mistake, and this essay doesn't do that either. Now, it talks about how she went down a political rather than a violent path, and that was a slightly missed opportunity to refer to the impact that this would have. By sticking to her guns and going down the political route, it moves her towards forming groups, as is mentioned in the second paragraph there, the People's Democracy, and her links with the SDLP down the line. And she stands firm on those beliefs moving forward, and that has a huge impact on Northern Ireland. This essay points out that there was a huge increase in the number of Catholics and Protestants, but Catholics in particular, attending secondary and third level education. And just in there, I think a statistic would really highlight the change, the increase in the percentage of Catholics attending third level. Because Devlin, that's where Devlin gets a lot of her influence, and it's where she really gains momentum in her political life. It's at Queen's University. It would be just good to point out there that it wasn't just her, that a huge amount of Catholics found themselves at third level, and this ends up, changing the face of Northern Ireland politics hugely. Lots of good detail and specific evidence in that second paragraph. Remember, the marking scheme points out about having substantial information, so a good use of dates there and specific places. It mentions briefly at the end of this paragraph, and I've touched on it already, about her founding the students' group, the People's Democracy. And that's an opportunity to comment on how leading young people would affect massive change in Northern Ireland, because it's the likes of these groups that end up becoming so hugely involved in civil rights and the civil rights movement that ends up changing Northern Ireland. Of course, it ends up leading to violence kind of inadvertently because people fight against them. But that's a point where you could dribble in a little bit more about the impact that Devlin was having on Northern Ireland and was kind of starting to have on Northern Ireland. Moving down the essay a good bit there to paragraphs 8, 9 and 10. It's kind of the same idea here. This essay is well structured and it's well laid out, apart from one small thing that I'll talk about at the end. It's nice use of short paragraphs and then more lovely, great specific facts and details about Heaney. We see dates, names, titles. Lovely. This person knows a lot about the topic at hand. But while their knowledge of the topic is very clear, are they treating the set question in a specific enough way? They talk about this new generation of poets, the poems that he wrote concerned with Ireland's Gaelic past, and how some of his poems spoke about that justice will triumph. And those are opportunities to talk about the impact that all of this had, the effect that his work would have. If I was to say that this essay was like a dinner, it needs a good bit more sprinkling of impact, the impact of all of these things. How these movements and this work gave voice to the people of Northern Ireland, that it gave some hope, that it gave a platform for writers and artists and playwrights to analyse the events of Northern Ireland. It's really important to look at the information you have and do, as I said before, some thinking on the day. What was the impact of all of this? What was the effect of all of this? I mentioned about how the layout is something I wanted to talk a little bit about here. So I've put in the two final paragraphs of this essay in front of you there. And basically what it does is this essay gives a conclusion on Devlin and a conclusion on Seamus Heaney. And it does summarise them both really well. It summarises, and actually in the conclusions, it does speak in a more detailed way about the impact that each had on Northern Ireland. It does refer back to the set question quite well. But this essay, if you have looked at it there, speaks all about Devlin, then all about Heaney, and then these two conclusions are kind of tacked on at the end. And I would have a think about that layout. So my advice would be to talk about Devlin then put in the paragraph of Devlin's conclusion, if you like, then talk about Heaney, and then put in that particular paragraph concluding Heaney, and then a little small overall summation separate to these. Now, it could be a couple of sentences at the end of Heaney's conclusion, but just something to sum up in general how these two big names in Northern Irish history had a big impact on the political and artistic and cultural face of Northern Ireland. Do you know what I mean? Just summing up them overall in general. So that brings me to the end of my essay breakdown today, guys. You do remember, I hope, that the full essay is examined on Studyclix for you to have a look at if you would like a bit more detail. And thanks for taking the time to watch. I'll talk to you again. Bye bye.